Not every episode of SpongeBob is a Krabby Patty of fun. Some are more like chum. We're diving into the episodes that will make you question why this show was ever made for kids. First up on our list is Little Yellow Book, where trust is thrown out the window for cheap thrills. It's another day at the Krusty Krab and Squidward is bored. Lucky for him, he happens to find SpongeBob's diary. Now, instead of respecting basic privacy or common decency, he reads it aloud to all the customers at the Krusty Krab, humiliating SpongeBob. And the kick to the crown nuggets? It's all for Squidward's entertainment. What makes this episode even harder to watch is that it doesn't shy away from the fallout. Bikini Bottom's disgust, Mr. Krabs' reprimand, and a sting of instant karma punishments all slap Squidward across the face. But let's cut the bullshit. He deserves every single one of them. The whole laugh at someone else's expense shtick reaches a low point here. Watching Squidward get punished repeatedly would usually feel satisfying, but his lack of remorse is kind of unsettling. Even after losing his house, being locked up in stocks, and getting pelted with tomatoes by Patrick, Squidward's still laughing it up reading SpongeBob's diary again. And the ending? Squidward doubles down on his horrid behavior by continuing to read SpongeBob's diary as tomatoes rain upon him. The bloody squid learned absolutely nada from this whole experience. The issue isn't just that the plot is mean-spirited, but that it turns SpongeBob's vulnerability into a punchline. SpongeBob's anguish isn't just brushed aside, it's openly mocked, which is rough for fans who aren't down to watch a beloved character get embarrassed for laughs. So yeah, this episode serves up a heaping dose of cringe featuring one of Squidward's nastiest moments. When you're picking which episode to avoid, this one should definitely make the list if you're not up for the character bashing. Unless you enjoy seeing SpongeBob being put through the ringer. Speaking of ringers, Stuck in the Ringer should have stayed stuck in production. SpongeBob is enjoying a peaceful morning shower because even porous sea sponges need some me time. As he's about to step out, he narrowly avoids slipping on a bar of soap. Classic cartoon trope, right? Wrong. Turns out life has a bigger plan for him. He steps on a random rubber duck that flew in through the window, slips on the soap anyway, and ends up stuck in a ringer. Yep, talk about a series of unfortunate events. Just when you think things couldn't get worse, Patrick pops in looking for his rubber duck. Now, you'd think his buddy would be helpful, but no, Patrick pulls out some forever glue, which is self-explanatory, and traps our spongy boy in this ringer for good because, get this, he thinks that's the helpful thing to do. Nice going, Pat. You're really living up to the bloody best friend title here. Now, SpongeBob's life quickly spirals into chaos. He tries to keep things cruising at the Krusty Krab, but with a ringer clamped around him, normal is out of the window along with any semblance of hygiene. Krabs, being the loving, empathetic boss he is, kicks SpongeBob to the curb to protect his precious moolah. Patrick tries to cheer him up with a trip to Super Weenie Hut Jr.'s for some ice cream, but SpongeBob can't even eat because the damn ringer is squeezing his esophagus shut. This day just keeps getting better and better for our spongy boy, don't it? Next stop, the carnival. SpongeBob's ringer makes winning games impossible, but Patrick's having a grand old time while his best friend suffers. Eventually, the frustration boils over and SpongeBob finally friggin' snaps, telling Patrick he's helped quite enough. Patrick runs off crying, and the Bikini Bottom citizens jump to his defense, scolding SpongeBob for being heartless. Yeah, SpongeBob is totally the villain here for wanting to, not be glued to a ringer. The next day, Patrick tries to distract himself from SpongeBob's absence, but fails dismally. He finds SpongeBob in his living room, zoned out and watching TV static like he's auditioning for a horror flick. Finally, realizing his forever glue blunder, Patrick's all sorry and his bloomin' tears dissolve some of the glue. I'm not sure how this makes any logical sense, but what the heck. They start bawling together and voila, the ringer finally comes off. Yay for emotional breakdowns that solve problems. But just when you think it's over, the ringer drops back onto them both, trapping them together. SpongeBob's chill with it this time, figuring at least he's stuck with his best friend. And because Patrick is, well, Patrick, he offers to bust out the forever glue again. Hey, why not make the same mistake twice since you didn't learn the first time? Which was probably what the writers thought when making I Was a Teenage Gary. This episode is on the list of episodes of SpongeBob you should never watch for a reason. It takes pet neglect, body horror, and poor old SpongeBob getting totally shafted to a new level. So SpongeBob is doing his usual good boy routine, playing with Gary. Then Patrick rolls in and lets SpongeBob in on the latest about some jellyfishing convention, because of course that's a bloody thing. And the two are all hyped. Whee! But uh-oh, who's gonna look after Gary while they're gone? Enter Squidward, the world's worst neighbor and soon-to-be worst pet sitter. SpongeBob's like, "Squid, bro, just feed him twice a day, that's all I'm asking." And Squidward's all fake smiling like, "Sure thing." We all know this isn't gonna end well. The second SpongeBob and Patrick leave, Squidward, he's hasta la vista. The squid troll doesn't even think about Gary. He's out sunbathing, living his best life, while poor Gary is inside starving, dehydrating, probably questioning all his snail life choices. It's rough, peeps. By the time SpongeBob gets back, Squidward has that classic, "Aw crap, I forgot I was responsible for literally anything" look on his face. Gary, he's not just neglected, he's basically a shell with a pulse at this point. It's brutal. Squidward tries to save face, shoving food into Gary's mouth like that's gonna undo the weekend of suffering. Nope. SpongeBob walks in, sees Gary looking like he's one drip away from flatlining, and absolutely freaks. Calls up the vet, who pulls up, drops a syringe of snail plasma on SpongeBob, and dips because he can't handle injections. Top-tier pro over here. SpongeBob is hitting the ceiling as usual and begs Squidward to do the shot. But our spongy boy is panicking so hard that Squidward accidentally stabs him with the plasma instead of Gary. And here's where it gets a little Halloween on us. SpongeBob starts acting snaily? I don't know how else to put it. He starts eating Gary's food, slurring his words into meows, and then dude straight up mutates. His eyes pop out, his limbs disappear, and boom, SpongeBob is a snail. A snail, y'all! It's like The Fly, but somehow even more disturbing because it's our spongy boy. SpongeBob, now fully transformed into a snail Bob, heads over to Squidward's house for help. Instead of stepping up and taking any responsibility, the squid troll freaks, locks every door and window, and acts like Snail Bob is some kind of mutant alien, which, holy crap nuggets, that's sort of understandable. But still, Squidward's guilt is all over the place, knowing that if he had just fed Gary, none of this nightmare fuel would have happened. In the middle of this whole chase, Squidward manages to inject himself with the snail plasma because this is just how karma works in Bikini Bottom. Now, Squidward's a snail too, and the episode wraps with SpongeBob, Squidward, and Gary meowing together like some weird snail choir on a fence. Just when you think the episode can't get any worse, Patrick throws a boot at them to shut them up. Like, great, let's just add a little physical abuse on top of the psychological horror. And the abuse gets even more hectic in this episode, Nasty Patty. This one is one of the weirdest mixes of gross-out humor, murder panic, and some super sus decisions. Like, we're talking crime-level nonsense here. A health inspector shows up at the Krusty Krab on what was probably the most innocent sunny day ever. SpongeBob's in the kitchen doing his thing, and Krabs, well, he's busy swimming in his money like some kind of underwater Scrooge McDuck. But then, cue the news report. There's a fake health inspector going around scamming restaurants for free food. Naturally, Mr. Krabs goes full cheapskate mode and assumes this guy is the con artist, cause heaven forbid anyone get a free Krabby Patty on his watch. Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob, deciding to serve up some revenge, whip up the most disgusting abomination of a Krabby Patty. This thing's got volcano sauce, sea horseradish, toenail clippings, and to top it off, it gets dipped in the toilet and dried with Krabs' sweaty gym sock. Yep, that's the Nasty Patty. You just know things are gonna go ding-dong downhill from here. Right as the inspector is about to chow down, he chokes on a fly, slips on the patty, and knocks himself out cold. That escalated quickly. SpongeBob and Krabs are all like, "Haha, we got him!" But then, oh snap, the news reveals the fake inspector's already been caught. So this dude, he's the real friggin' deal. Suddenly, Krabs and our Spongy Boy are looking at his limp noodle body thinking they've accidentally murdered a guy over a free meal. Just like that, it's full-blown panic mode. Instead of, I don't know, calling for help like most people, Krabs decides the best solution is to, bury the body. Yeah, you heard that right. He literally chooses to go the crime route. They drag the poor health inspector out to some random hill and start digging a grave. As if things weren't bad enough, the inspector starts waking up just in time to get smacked in the head with a rock. Murder. Now enter the cops. They're all friendly, offering a ride back to the Krusty Krab, but my dudes SpongeBob and Krabs are sweating bullets because they've got the health inspector in the trunk. The police keep asking suspicious questions, but Krabs brushes it off with some half-baked story about soda. Back at the Krusty Krab, SpongeBob's next mission? Sneak the unconscious inspector into the freezer. Simple, right? Except SpongeBob's got him stuffed in his hat. The cops, yeah, they're watching him with raised eyebrows the whole time. Then, plot twist, the cops get a call about 2 suspects burying a body on Shallow Grave Road, which is somehow not a sus red flag name. And now SpongeBob and Krabs are themselves. One officer casually asks for ice, which of course is locked up in the same freezer where they stashed the body. Krabs goes into a full meltdown, barricading the door, making excuses about ice being a myth, and we just know the jig is up. Finally, they crack. Krabs and SpongeBob confess to the whole murder thing, but when the cops open the freezer, ta-da, nobody! They even joke about the inspector turning into a zombie, but then, just as the tension lifts, the health inspector stumbles back into the scene like it's nothing. The cops, thinking he's an actual zombie, beat him down one more time for good measure. And yeah, the dude wakes up just in time to tell them that they passed the inspection, like none of this insane chaos ever happened. SpongeBob and Krabs nearly committed murder and were about to dump the body for a patty prank gone horribly wrong. Which is why it's not surprising SpongeBob gets dumped by his friends in this next one. I'm talking about the episode Dumped, where SpongeBob gets straight up ghosted by his own pet, Gary. Yeah, you heard that right, his snail. So it starts off all cute and stuff with SpongeBob and Gary playing tag like they're best buds forever. But then Patrick pops in all buddy-buddy with SpongeBob and gets real friendly with Gary. And I mean real friendly. Next thing you know, Gary's giving SpongeBob the cold shoulder and practically begging for a sleepover at Patrick's house. SpongeBob agrees, thinking nothing of it. But then comes the morning. SpongeBob's expecting Gary to waltz back in like, thanks for the hang, Pat. Instead, what happens? Gary straight up chooses Patrick over SpongeBob. Like, he doesn't even hesitate. The snail just slides away with Patrick like SpongeBob wasn't even there. That's harsh, brah. SpongeBob's left standing there, heart shattered into a million itty-bitty pieces. Patrick's all smug, claiming Gary as his new pet like some kind of snail-stealing villain. SpongeBob's over here in full-blown denial, thinking, there's no way my loyal Gary would betray me. But when it's decision time, Gary goes right to Patrick like SpongeBob's yesterday's news. Naturally, SpongeBob's not about to just take this lying down. He decides to show Gary that he doesn't need him by getting a new pet. First, he brings home Rex, a worm he's convinced is way better than a snail. I mean, worms are loyal, right? Wrong. Rex hops on a bus and pieces out faster than you can say replacement pet. Rebound, fail. Then we've got Larry the snail, and let's just say this dude's got an attitude for days. He's like one of those fussy ginger cats that's full of crap. He's cranky, picky, and basically turns SpongeBob's life into a nightmare. SpongeBob even gives up his own damn bed for this diva. And what does Larry give him in return? Nothing but drama and nasty vibes. Honestly, it's no surprise when Larry pulls a vanishing act too. Next up, Jerry. Yeah, SpongeBob's really scraping the bottom of the barrel here, bringing in an anatomically correct snail as if that's gonna fill the void. Guess what? It doesn't. Poor Spongy Boy is sitting there emotionally wrecked, wondering what went wrong. Meanwhile, Patrick's just vibing with Gary. He swings by SpongeBob's place to do some laundry, totally rubbing the whole "Gary loves me more" thing in SpongeBob's face. SpongeBob's desperation hits peak levels as he begs Gary to come back, offering him anything he wants. Patrick, the ever so patronizing jerk, tells SpongeBob to move on. Gary's made his choice. Here's where it gets real juicy. It turns out Gary wasn't ditching SpongeBob for Patrick. Nope, Gary was just after the cookie in Patrick's pocket the whole time. Like, wait a sec, bro really traded SpongeBob's love for a snack? Holy crap, Gary, talk about being a user. After munching down that cookie, Gary immediately slithers right back to SpongeBob like nothing ever happened. But Patrick? Oh man, this dude is crushed. Watching his newfound pet buddy crawl away, he's standing there staring at the door, heartbroken. His final line? "Gary, I thought what we had was special." Yeah, Patrick, you and SpongeBob both. Karma's a... In the end, Gary and SpongeBob are reunited, going for a nice walk while Patrick's left sulking like the third wheel he is. But the damage has been done. It's an emotional roller coaster of betrayal, jealousy, and some seriously questionable pet ownership dynamics. Which is why this episode, A Pal for Gary, might be SpongeBob's revenge for all the backstabbing. It all starts with SpongeBob feeding Gary, who's clearly got some big plans for the day, like maybe going for a walk or hanging with his favorite spongy boy. But nah, SpongeBob's got no time for that, because he's got to hustle over to the Krusty Krab. Feeling guilty, he leaves Gary behind, solo and sad. You can practically see the tears in Gary's little snail eyes. When SpongeBob gets to the Krusty Krab, Krabs is being, well, his usual crabsy self, straight up refusing service to a customer just because they brought a pet worm in. This sparks a guilt trip in SpongeBob's brain. Oh no, poor Gary's at home alone! So SpongeBob does what any totally rational pet owner would do. He calls Gary on the phone. Yeah, like Gary's just sitting there waiting by the phone to hear SpongeBob say, "I'll be home soon, buddy." FYI, Gary's not, and this ain't helping him feel any less lonely. After a long-ass day, SpongeBob's heading home, ready to make it up to Gary. Except on his way home, he spots a truck selling what looks like the cutest little puffball pets, Puffy Fluffs. Now at this point, we're all screaming, "Don't do it, SpongeBob!" But of course, he does it. Despite the lady at the truck very clearly warning him that these things are absolute monsters, especially around snails, SpongeBob does what SpongeBob does best. Completely ignores her and grabs one of these demonic little fluff balls for Gary. And he doesn't even pay for it. He just bolts off like he's doing Gary the biggest favor ever. Back at home, SpongeBob introduces Gary to his new pal, Puffy Fluffy. Gary is a wise AF snail and instantly catches wind that this is bad juju. While SpongeBob is in the kitchen, Puffy Fluffy goes full-on horror movie villain and starts threatening poor Gary. This fluffy demon is almost ready for a throwdown, and yet SpongeBob doesn't notice a thing. Every time he walks in, he accuses Gary of being the troublemaker. "Spongy boy, my guy, open your eyes!" He even makes Gary sleep next to the murderous fluff ball. You can feel the tension, like, "Gary, buddy, you gotta survive the night!" Puffy Fluffy keeps escalating the threats, and Gary's trying every snail defense move in the book, but it's no use. Puffy's too strong, and Gary's getting wrecked. At one point, they even end up in the library, and Puffy knocks over the fireplace, starting a fire. Where in the bloody ballsacks is SpongeBob? Still snoozing away, dreaming about his grandma's house or... Gary, like the hero he is, puts out the fire all by himself. This snail deserves a medal, honestly. The next morning, SpongeBob wakes up to find his house completely trashed. Instead of putting two and two together, he immediately blames Gary for the mess, thinking Gary's just jealous of his new friend. Seriously, SpongeBob, are we watching the same episode? Then comes the moment of truth. SpongeBob walks in on Puffy Fluffy, about to eat Gary alive. I'm practically crapping my pants for this poor snail. It's a full-blown showdown. But does SpongeBob finally see what's happening? Nope. He still blames Gary, accusing him of harassing Puffy. Like, dude, your pet's about to become a buffet breakfast. Finally, Gary takes matters into his own, slime and saves SpongeBob's life. He lassos Puffy Fluffy and scares the puffball so bad it runs off. You'd think This would be the point where SpongeBob connects the dots, but nah. Even after being literally saved by Gary, SpongeBob's still convinced Gary's the problem. The episode wraps up with SpongeBob back at the Krusty Krab, this time with Gary in tow, because there's no way he's leaving his boy alone again. Mr. Krabs even hires Gary as a fry cook, which is a whole other level of weird logic, but hey, it's Bikini Bottom and I'm over this nonsense. Don't trust cute puffballs, and maybe pay more attention to your pet before they have to save your oblivious self from a murderous monster. But it looks like SpongeBob has learned nothing because he can't even save himself from the Splinter. It all starts out innocently enough. SpongeBob's having a great morning at the Krusty Krab, flippin' Krabby Patties like he's on top of the world. He's even in such a good mood that not even the Squid Troll's snarky comments can bring him down. Everything's all rainbows and sunshine, until SpongeBob somehow manages to fling his spatula into the ceiling. Naturally, he tries to get it back, and of course, this leads to one of those classic, almost deadly mishaps where he's dodging scissors and swords that have no business being there in the first place. But hey, it's SpongeBob, and his spatula saves him at the last second. Unfortunately for our boy, his clumsy day isn't over yet. In the most cringe-inducing scene ever, SpongeBob slips on some tartar sauce, slides across the floor, and bam! His thumb slams into a wooden plank and he gets the world's worst splinter. I mean, this thing is nasty right out of the gate. His thumb is red, swollen, and throbbing, and the sight alone will make you feel like you need a tetanus shot. He tries to pull it out with his weak noodle arms, even tries to bite it out, like, SpongeBob, what are you doing? But nothing works. Squidward, always the schemer, notices SpongeBob's problem and takes this glorious opportunity to mess with him. He convinces SpongeBob that if Mr. Krabs sees the splinter, he'll send him home. So now SpongeBob's freaking out, begging Squidward not to snitch. But being the bloody troll that he is, Squidward flushes SpongeBob's spatula and hat down the toilet just to mess with him more. I swear, this guy, he lives for SpongeBob's misery. Desperate and panicking, SpongeBob calls in backup Patrick. And I've got to say, Patrick shows up dressed as a doctor like it's no big deal. If you've ever trusted Patrick with anything, you know this isn't going to go well. He tries to help SpongeBob, but his treatment only makes things worse. He somehow pushes the splinter even deeper into SpongeBob's thumb, making it swell up like a disgusting, throbbing balloon. Then, as if things weren't bad enough, Patrick rubs garbage on it. Of course he does. And now SpongeBob's thumb is not just swollen, it's infected. Patrick, meanwhile, is like, well, my shift's over, and just leaves. Good job, fake Dr. Patrick. Real helpful. Next, our spongy boy runs into Mr. Krabs, who's been tipped off by Squidward about the splinter situation. SpongeBob's trying to hide his thumb, but when Squidward sees the swollen mess that it's become, he passes out. It's that gross. Mr. Krabs, though, is remarkably unfazed. He just yanks the splinter out like it's nothing. Boom, problem solved, right? Dead wrong. What happens next is gag-inducing. I think I still have nightmares about this. There's this giant infected boil on SpongeBob's thumb, and as Krabs checks it out, it looks like it's going to explode, but then confetti shoots out of it. For a second there, you'd think the episode might be turning around. Whew, what a relief. Lies! It's a fake out, peeps, because right after this, the real eruption happened. A geyser of pus comes gushing out like some grotesque fountain. Mr. Krabs whips out an umbrella just in time to shield himself from the splash zone. Holy crap, this scene is enough to scar you for life. Finally, the pus fountain stops and SpongeBob's thumb goes back to normal, like none of this horror show ever happened. Mr. Krabs, true to form, is just relieved he doesn't have to pay SpongeBob's workers' comp because God forbid he pays his employees for being injured on the job. Meanwhile, Squidward, seeing a loophole, tries to get in on that sweet, sweet workers' comp by smashing his own hand in the cash register. But Squidward's plan royally backfires because his shift just ended 2 minutes ago. Tough luck, dude. Serve Squidward right for all the he stirred in this episode. SpongeBob's choice of company gets him into such messed up situations. Like when he decides Patrick is a good choice for a nanny in Pet Sitter Pat. SpongeBob's been invited to his grandma's birthday party. Aw, how sweet, sweet. Our Sponge Boy is all excited until he remembers that he has to take care of Gary again. The first thing he does is ask Squidward to watch Gary. Didn't he learn from last time? But Tentacle Troll ain't having any of it because Gary wrecked his precious kelp garden. Yeah, I'd say that's a good thing Squidward's out. So SpongeBob turns to the only person left, Patrick. Now, why anyone would trust Patrick with anything living is beyond me, but SpongeBob's got a party to go to and desperate times call for desperate decisions, apparently. Patrick agrees to pet sit Gary, and SpongeBob leaves him with a detailed schedule of what to do and when. Feeding, bathing, basic pet stuff. But Patrick, being Patrick, he takes one look at the schedule, holds it upside down, realizes he can't read it, and chucks it into the bloody trash. Things are already looking rough for our slimy pet snail. Patrick's first order of business? Feeding Gary. Sounds simple, but this is Patrick we're working with, so I'm not holding thumbs. Instead of feeding the snail, Patrick decides to taste test all of Gary's food, like to see if it's safe. He chows down on the entire bag of snail food while Gary looks on in horror, realizing this is going to be a long day. Holy Krabby Patties, why is the snail always being abused and starved when SpongeBob leaves him with his friends? Meanwhile, SpongeBob's at his grandma's birthday party, but he keeps getting these anxiety-riddled visions of Patrick accidentally destroying Gary. And to be frank, he's not that far off. Every time SpongeBob calls to check in, Patrick somehow manages to make it look like things are totally fine. Meanwhile, in reality, Gary's constantly in danger, and Patrick's idea of pet care is bordering on criminal negligence. But SpongeBob, bless his heart, keeps thinking they're just having a grand old time. The real chaos kicks in when Patrick tries to give Gary a bath. Anyone who's seen a cat react to water knows how Gary's feeling about this. Gary refuses, and instead of taking the hint, Patrick escalates. In a move that should have been immediately illegal, Patrick's next idea for a bath is literally a flamethrower. Yep, you heard that right. He tries to roast little Gary. If that's not a giant red flag for SpongeBob to never let Patrick near Gary again, I don't know what is. But somehow, when SpongeBob calls again, Patrick's like, "Everything's fine," and they're actually having fun. How, you ask? Well, Patrick accidentally floods the entire house by leaving a hose running and forgetting to turn off both the sink and the bathtub. Again, don't get me started on this logic. You live underwater in the friggin' sea. The result? SpongeBob's home turns into a water park, and SpongeBob's on the other end of the phone thinking they're in danger. Finally, SpongeBob's anxiety hits critical mass. He bolts out of his grandma's birthday party and runs home, probably breaking a world record for the fastest sprint through Bikini Bottom. He opens the door to find his entire house wrecked and flooded like the Titanic. There's water everywhere. It's like Patrick turned SpongeBob's house into an aquarium without telling him. Wasn't there already water everywhere? Okay, I'm not going there. Just nope. Anywho, so what does he find when he goes upstairs? Gary just chilling in a chair reading a book to Patrick. Yep, turns out Gary is not only literate, but he's also the one taking care of Patrick, because Patrick's clearly out of his depth. I just couldn't help myself with that pun. SpongeBob's like, Gary's reading you a book? How sweet. But in peak Patrick fashion, he responds with, "I thought the book was called Meow Meow Meow." Yeah, maybe Patrick should have taken a quick course on Basic Friendship Skills 101 before roasting SpongeBob's entire existence in I'm with Stupid. This is one of those episodes that makes you cringe and laugh at the same time. Mostly cringe, though. Patrick really does SpongeBob dirty in this one. The episode starts off with SpongeBob in his usual cheerful mood, ready to go jellyfishing with his best bud. But when he pops by Patrick's place, he finds him in full-on panic mode making furniture out of sand. That's actually kind of impressive. I can't even make a rat-shit sandcastle. Patrick explains that it's Starfish Day and his parents are coming to visit, but here's the snag: Patrick's parents think he's dumb, and he's not about to deal with their condescension. Using the usual Patrick logic, his solution is to make our spongy boy act like a complete idiot to make him look smarter by comparison. And because SpongeBob is the ultimate ride-or-die best friend, he agrees to this ridiculous plan. This is not gonna end well. The next day, a married couple of starfish roll up to Patrick's rock, and Patrick immediately assumes they're his parents. No questions asked. Patrick's confidence and his lack of awareness is truly impressive. Anyway, he brings them inside, and they treat him like a clueless child right off the bat. Toxic parental vibes much? In the meantime, SpongeBob's outside hyping himself up for his big moment of acting like a total fool. He even puts on his karate helmet to really sell the stupid look. When he bursts in, it's showtime. SpongeBob's pulling out all the stops with weird noises, awkward movements, and just a whole bunch of bizarre behavior that makes Patrick look like a genius in comparison. At dinner, things escalate. Patrick's parents are more impressed with him than ever, thanks to SpongeBob's antics. Here's the twist, though. Patrick starts to actually believe that SpongeBob is stupid. Yeah, I don't know what this dude was smoking before his parents rocked up. Patrick straight up forgets that SpongeBob's faking it. He starts roasting SpongeBob, tossing out insults left and right like he's at a comedy shindig. SpongeBob, understandably, is not amused and pulls Patrick into the kitchen to have a little chat. Here's where the bromance starts to crack. SpongeBob reminds Patrick that this whole stupid act was part of their plan, but Patrick's in full denial mode, convinced SpongeBob's dumb for real. SpongeBob's like, dude, you're literally the one who asked me to do this. But nope, Patrick's gone too far. He even dares SpongeBob to try and impress his parents more than he can. So SpongeBob tries to clear things up with Patrick's parents, confessing that he was never actually stupid. It was all a performance to make Patrick look smart. But they don't believe him. They think Patrick somehow taught SpongeBob basic life skills like talking in full sentences. SpongeBob's at the end of his rope and he just can't take it anymore. It's one of the best Spongy Boy meltdowns. SpongeBob screams and literally crashes through the wall of Patrick's house. Yeah, that's how done he is. Now that SpongeBob's out of the picture, Patrick's parents are all like, wow, Patrick, you really are a smart cookie. But just wait for it. Patrick, with his tiny hamster wheel brain turning, suddenly realizes something. These aren't even his real parents. He's been entertaining two random strangers who just happened to walk by. Their names are Janet and Marty, and oh yeah, they don't even have a son. Just when things couldn't get any weirder, Squidward shows up, absolutely fed up because two other starfish have been bothering him all day asking for Patrick. And guess what? Those are Patrick's actual parents. Patrick's like, oh, hey Mom and Dad, good to see you. And they're just relieved that he's got his pants on. The irony is not lost on me. As Janet and Marty awkwardly realize they've been chilling with the wrong starfish, they peace out, leaving Patrick to laugh it off with his real family. The episode ends with Patrick blissfully unaware of all the havoc he just caused, while the rock closes and we're left wondering how anyone survives being friends with this guy. Because in the gift of gum, Patrick seems to be pulling out all the stops to outright murder his friends. So it's Best Friends Day in Bikini Bottom, and Patrick decides to celebrate by giving SpongeBob the most disgusting gift ever, an enormous ball of used gum called Gummy. And I mean enormous. Patrick's been collecting this monstrosity for his entire life, and it shows because it's just as gross as you can imagine. But of course, SpongeBob's too nice to be like, dude, this is the most cringe thing anyone has ever given me, so he pretends to be totally into it. He even thinks it's a better gift than the robotic butler he got for Patrick. Yeah, Patrick gets a fancy butler and SpongeBob gets used gum. Seems totally fair. As soon as SpongeBob takes Gummy inside, though, he starts realizing the horror of what he's dealing with. This thing isn't just gross, it's sentient. Like there's a pair of old underpants that crawls out of the gumball and starts talking to him. That's the kind of nightmare fuel you can't just unsee. Naturally, SpongeBob tries to get rid of the thing, but Patrick's got some weird attachment to this gross gumball. Like, why the fudge would you give him the bloody gumball if it's that special to you? When our SpongeBob tries to throw it away, Patrick catches him and is like, oh, you were just dressing it up with a trash can, cool. In Patrick's mind, this somehow makes sense. Next, SpongeBob tries to bury Gummy to hide the horror forever, but nope, Patrick catches him again. This time, Patrick assumes the hole is so Spongy Boy can admire Gummy from below, like some kind of gumball art installation. Patrick insists it needs to be displayed somewhere special, and he decides to hang the whole sticky mess above SpongeBob's doorway. Yeah, above his doorway, like a giant, gross chandelier that just looms over him as he comes and goes. Sweet dreams, SpongeBob! Later that night, SpongeBob makes another attempt to ditch Gummy because by now it's clear that keeping this thing around is not an option. As he sneaks out to dispose of it, he accidentally frees several fish who were trapped inside the gum. Gummy's been holding innocent victims hostage, but SpongeBob's still stuck with this thing. When he tries to pull Gummy off his house, he gets stuck to it himself. Of friggin' course he does. Gummy's like the world's grossest magnet, and SpongeBob's officially out of options. The next day, Sandy, the sensible friend, swings by and sees SpongeBob hanging outside his house, still stuck to the giant ball of gum. So she tries to help him by lassoing a piece of Gummy onto a passing truck. It almost works, but in true Bikini Bottom style, the plan backfires spectacularly. Instead of freeing SpongeBob, Sandy ends up getting pulled in by the gumball, crashing into SpongeBob's house and causing the gum to splatter everywhere. Now, SpongeBob, Sandy, even Squidward, and their houses are all stuck in this sticky nightmare. And just when you think things can't get any more bleak, here comes Patrick. SpongeBob's had enough by this point and just commands Patrick to take Gummy back. Patrick, bloody wild card that he is, responds by eating the entire thing. Yeah, he devours the whole gumball, turning himself into a massive blob of gum-fueled obesity. But wait, there's more. After consuming his lifetime's worth of gum, Patrick lets out a massive hiccup that blows a giant bubble. This bubble explodes, and guess what? It covers all of Bikini Bottom in sticky gum residue. Everywhere. The entire town is now dealing with Patrick's best friend's day gift. Patrick absolutely loves this and declares that this is the best friend's day ever. I have no idea how this qualifies as a great day in any sense of the word. And that, my dudes, is how SpongeBob gets stuck with a gum monster, his entire neighborhood gets slimed, and Patrick walks away thinking he's the best gift giver in Bikini Bottom. So yeah, if you don't want to get grossed out or add to your nightmare bank account, I wouldn't watch these episodes. But hey, I'm just a guy who likes cartoons. Catch you in the next vid.